Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the subcommittee at any time. Welcome to today's hearing entitled From Transformative Science to Technological Breakthroughs, DOE's National Laboratories. I recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. So good morning, y'all. Today, the Energy Subcommittee will be examining the U.S. Department of Energy's national laboratories and their role in advancing scientific discoveries as well as developing innovative technologies. Our discussion will explore several topics, including research security, DOE's world-leading user facilities, as well as emerging technologies. Since its early formation in World War II, the national laboratories have consistently been at the forefront of scientific achievement. As the largest federal recipient of basic research funding in the physical sciences, the national labs and their 28 user facilities have taken on the most fundamental challenges in the fields of computer science, high-energy physics, fusion energy, as well as material science. Despite these challenges, the labs have made significant scientific breakthroughs, which include sequencing the first human genome, mapping the universe, achieving fusion ignition, and discovering 22 of the elements on the periodic table. These achievements have been instrumental to U.S. technological leadership, creating new industries as well as products. In tandem, through public-private partnerships, the national labs play a major role in transforming our energy sector. For instance, the National Energy Technology Lab, known as NETL, worked with industry to develop hydraulic fracturing technology. Before its widespread use in the late 2000s, the United States was actually in a dire energy state, relying on foreign powers to supply natural gas. As a result, the U.S. built LNG terminals, including one in Freeport, Texas, my district, to import trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Due to NETL's collaborative work with industry, however, the United States repurposed these same terminals to export LNG to our allies while reducing the cost of energy at home. This showcases the importance of public-private partnerships and their ability to ensure our national security and our energy independence. Likewise, the national laboratories are involved in the development of next-generation energy technologies, for example, such as advanced nuclear energy. For over the last 20 years, researchers at Oak Ridge and Idaho National Labs have made significant improvements to TRISO fuel, which is a fabricated fuel using Gen 4 reactors. Partly due to the lab's work, TRISO fuel has been adopted by some of the leading advanced reactor companies, including X-Energy, a recipient of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. X-Energy plans to use this fabricated fuel for its XE100 reactor, which will provide power and heat to Dow's industrial production facility in Seadrift, Texas, just south of my district. Moreover, the lab's work in fabricated fuels, along with their ability to supply HALEU, which bring forth a new nuclear renaissance. With our focus on national laboratories, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the CHIPS and Science Act. Back in the 117th Congress, I, as the Energy Subcommittee ranking member, along with the House Science Committee members, worked across the aisle to produce the Department of Energy Science for the Future Act, which included my bill, the Computing Advancements for Material Science, CAMS Act. This large, comprehensive House product ultimately became the basic text to the CHIPS as well as the Science Act, which reauthorized the Office of Science's basic research programs, authorized upgrades and experimental facilities such as the Electron Ion Collider at Brookhaven National Laboratory, and directed DOE to implement new research security provisions. Despite the wide set support for this bill, Congress has yet to appropriate to the levels authorized in the CHIPS and Science Act. This failure is partly due to the Biden's administration prioritization of new and untested demonstration and deployment programs. While the IIJA and the IRA invested close to $100 billion for over 70 new programs, the Office of Science and its labs received only $2 billion, which is a paltry 2% of funding outside of the traditional appropriation process. This doesn't include the Biden administration's risky loan office, which doled out tens of billions to its political connected clean energy friends. 2017, I led a joint subcommittee hearing titled, quote, Risky Business, the DOE Loan Guarantee Program, end quote, where I highlighted in my opening statement that the Yvonne Paw Solar Project would come at the cost of the ratepayers if the, quote, if the project fails and goes into default, end quote. With the recent announcement by PG&E ending its relationship with Ivan Paw, it seems that my prediction was correct. It looks like it's coming true. Moreover, I hope that the Trump administration will work with Congress to fully fund the basic science programs at levels consistent with CHIPS and science and reprioritize the department to focus on basic research and its labs. This will ensure U.S. competitiveness and technological prowess in the 21st century. I'd like to thank in advance our witness today for their testimony, and I look forward to our conversation here today. I now recognize the ranking member, the representative from North Carolina, for her opening statement.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much to Chairman Weber for convening this hearing today to discuss the importance of the National Laboratory Network to preserving our nation's leading edge in science and developing the energy solutions and workforce of tomorrow. I want to thank our distinguished witnesses for being here to share your testimony and insights on this topic. As a nation, we have entered a pivotal stage where we have not one, but several emerging clean energy technologies that have the potential to reshape and improve our economy. We have advanced and modular nuclear demonstration reactors being designed and built right now that, when completed, will give investors the confidence they need to make them the backbone of our electrical grid and improve reliability. We have fusion, right, Representative Lofgren? The holy grail of energy, making strides in being able to be realized in years rather than decades. We have energy storage technologies making leaps in performance and safety, which, when paired with new smart grid technologies, will make intermittency concerns with renewable energy a thing of the past. These energy technologies are poised not only to decarbonize the electrical grid, but to make it more resilient, reliable, and secure in times of climate disasters. In my home state of North Carolina, we are seeing hurricanes becoming increasingly stronger in the wake of climate change. And we need our grid infrastructure to improve accordingly. And clearly, we have also seen this in Texas, California, and throughout our country. We also need to continue to support partnerships that share advanced computing resources between the national laboratories and NOAA that will enable more accurate forecasting of weather and climate events, allowing first responders to prepare ahead of time and potentially save lives and property. And as I've come to understand, at the forefront of all of these technologies and partnerships is the Department of Energy's National Laboratory Network. I'm looking forward to hearing from our expert witnesses on the valuable work the national laboratories are doing, how they are improving the security of our communities, and what Congress can do to support their work. That said, I'm also deeply concerned about the impact of the administration's blanket freeze on federal funding provided by the bipartisan infrastructure law, in flagrant violation of several recent court orders. It is undermining the ability of these labs in partnership with the private sector to strengthen our grid and prevent future severe impacts on our communities. So I'll be digging into that as well. Now, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask unanimous consent to waive onto the committee Representative Bill Foster for the purpose of asking questions of the witnesses during this hearing.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Ross. Without objection, Chairman Babin's opening statement will be included in the record. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee for a statement.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chairman Weber and Ranking Member Ross. And thank you to the witnesses who got here through a snowstorm. We appreciate the effort that you've taken to be here today. The Department of Energy, as we know, oversees 17 world-class national laboratories and an array of programs focused on ensuring U.S. leadership in clean energy industries of the future and keeping our nation on the forefront of scientific discovery. The department also has the solemn responsibility of stewarding and ensuring the reliability of our nuclear weapons stockpile. Often for broad bipartisan hearings like this, where a major focus is on introducing our committee's many new members to the full range of exciting facilities and projects that the department oversees, here is where I'd pivot to a favorite subject of mine that the ranking member just referenced, and that's fusion energy. We'll certainly get to that, and I'm very appreciative that we have the director from Lawrence Livermore National Lab with the NIF facility here today. I'm deeply disturbed, I will say, by the actions of the current administration and its severe impacts on the entire research enterprise, including national labs. Funds appropriated by Congress to accelerate the development and deployment of a broad range of technologies have been arbitrarily and indefinitely frozen, and the new director of the White House Office of Management and Budget has threatened to make a large portion of these so-called pauses permanent by violating the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, and even more alarmingly, the power of the purse vested to Congress in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. I'm also concerned about the assault on diversity in science. I remember last year's chairman of the committee in response to an amendment about broadening the scope, saying those good old boys in rural Oklahoma never get a chance to compete. We can't leave behind any bright mind in America, and it's worth remembering that not everybody has the same level of wealth and access to get in and compete. This is all about competition and merit and opportunity. Lastly, I want to say that it is really unconscionable that the critical missions of the Department of Energy could now be catastrophically undermined by an ill-informed, unelected billionaire and his deeply inexperienced minions. We know that the new Secretary of Energy personally granted access to DOE's IT system to personnel associated with the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, over the objections of DOE's own offices of General Counsel and the Chief Information Officer. They objected in part because a 23-year-old member of DOGE had not undergone the standard background check normally required to gain access to this highly sensitive data. The risk is further heightened due to the enormous financial conflicts of interest that Mr. Musk, as CEO of Tesla, has with DOE. This is why ranking members Deborah Ross, Amelia Sykes, and I recently sent a letter to the Secretary requesting a full account of DOGE's activities at the department and the specific access that had been provided to proprietary as well as classified data. This breach is all the more galling given that Tesla itself received a $465 million loan from the DOE Loan Program Office in 2010 that played a crucial role in the company's rise as a global leader in electric vehicles. There appears to be no end to the hypocrisy that these folks are willing to engage in. All this said, I recognize that the witnesses before us today are certainly not responsible for the radical actions of this new administration, even if they have been forced to address and mitigate their consequences as best they can. So I truly look forward to this discussion to better understand these impacts and to chart a better path forward for our country's best and brightest minds. I look forward to hearing from the panel about recent advancements in fusion industry. I do want to celebrate that this committee has always operated in a bipartisan manner that goes back decades, and I'm cheered by Chairman Weber's call that the science and CHIPS and science be fully funded up to the authorized level. That is an important statement, Mr. Chairman, and with that I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I now introduce our witnesses. Our first witness today is Dr. John Wagner, the Director of Idaho National Laboratory. Our next witness is Dr. Thom Mason, the Director at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Our third witness is Dr. Paul Kearns, the Director at Argonne National Laboratory. And our final, and some would argue best witness, is Dr. Kimberly Budil, the Director at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I now recognize Dr. Wagner for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Weber, Subcommittee Ranking Member Ross, and Ranking Member Lofgren. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me in this discussion today. My name is John Wagner. I'm the Director at the Idaho National Laboratory, the nation's Center for Nuclear Energy Research and Development. I also serve as the chair of the National Laboratory Directors Council. I consider it to be a true honor to be a part of a system tasked with finding solutions to our nation's greatest energy and security challenges. On a personal note, my first professional experiences as a college student was during internships in the summertime at Oak Ridge National Laboratory and Los Alamos National Laboratory. These experiences opened my eyes to amazing possibilities and have had a profound impact on my career and on my life. After beginning in the private sector, I worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory for nearly 17 years before my passions for nuclear energy brought me to Idaho in 2016 as the chief scientist of the Materials and Fuels Complex and later became lab director in 2020. As Energy Secretary Chris Wright recently wrote, DOE's R&D enterprise is the envy of the world. Originating during the Manhattan Project, our national labs have achieved breakthroughs that have literally changed the path of human history and ensured American scientific and technical leadership. Mastery of today's new technologies is vital for our future global leadership. We must, as a nation, understand and be first in finding answers to questions that will determine how future generations live. Questions such as, how do we leverage our abundant energy resources for our power prosperity? How do we innovate to ensure durable, stable energy dominance through fission, fusion, and other technologies? How do we harness AI, exascale computing, quantum computing, to provide breakthroughs and solutions to benefit American people and American industry? How do we ensure domestic production of strategic and critical minerals and materials to secure our supply chain? How do we secure our grid and other critical infrastructure for the reliable delivery of necessary energy and water? And how do we ensure U.S. national security at home and abroad? The experts at our national laboratories are hard at work finding these solutions to these pressing challenges. At the same time, they're constantly looking ahead, over the horizon, to be prepared for future challenges. Our labs design and operate unique facilities and unparalleled scientific instruments that enable a greater understanding of the origin of the universe, fundamental properties of materials, behaviors of biological systems, and development and delivery of pharmaceuticals, and so much more. Within the DOE National Laboratory System, there are 3 applied energy laboratories. Idaho National Laboratory is one of them, also the National Energy Technology Laboratory and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. These applied energy laboratories working together play a crucial role in driving energy innovation for the nation. At INL, we have made historic contributions to our nation's energy and national security. Notable achievements include first demonstration of nuclear power, which now provides nearly 10% of the electricity around the world and nearly 20% of the U.S. electricity. And also in the development of nuclear propulsion, which has played a key role in establishing U.S. naval military dominance. Today, INL is helping maintain and extend the lives of America's nuclear reactor fleet while working with industry to demonstrate and deploy the next generation of nuclear power. Longtime nuclear leaders like Westinghouse, General Electric, Holtec, Southern Company, and a long list have joined with a growing number of nuclear startups like TerraPower, X-Energy, Oklo, Kairos, Radiant, Lightbridge, and many others. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to mention all of them. Collaborating with the laboratories on innovative reactor designs, fuel development, and associated technologies to address an expanding variety of energy use cases. Our advanced reactor test beds are nearing completion, and in the next few years will enable multiple private sector reactor demonstrations, de-risking these technologies to support commercial adoption and deployment. We see an example of this as U.S.-based refinery and chemical production companies are funding engineering evaluations for power, steam, heat, and hydrogen production from existing nuclear power plants, as well as advanced reactors. In support of these emerging technologies, U.S.-based Bloom Energy, Fuel Cell Energy, General Electric, and others are using the capabilities at Idaho National Laboratory to demonstrate high-temperature electrolysis to produce hydrogen and oxygen. But every DOE lab has exciting stories to tell. Stories of harnessing research and development for the benefit of the American people and our industries. I believe that our 17 national laboratories are a primary difference maker, our nation's ace in the hole, if you will, that will enable us to win the competition between nations, enhance our standing as a world leader in energy and technological innovation, and ensure our economic prosperity. In closing, I appreciate very much the opportunity to be a part of this discussion, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Mason, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Weber, Ranking Member Ross, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Thom Mason, the director of Los Alamos National Laboratory. For more than 80 years, our lab, which is one of the 17 DOE national labs, has played a critical role in advancing scientific discovery, technology development that strengthens U.S. security, economic competitiveness, and energy leadership. Today, I will focus on 3 key areas: national security challenges in a rapidly evolving world, the role of artificial intelligence in defense and scientific advancement, and the need for infrastructure investment to sustain innovation. Over the past 30-plus years, the geopolitical landscape has shifted from a bipolar Cold War structure to a post-Cold War environment where the U.S. was the sole superpower to the tripolar dynamic we see today with U.S., China, and Russia compounded by independent and surrogate actors. This has created new challenges that demands technological innovation to maintain strategic stability. A critical component of national security is energy security. The U.S. must invest in nuclear power as a stable energy source that reduces reliance on foreign supply chains, and Los Alamos is at the forefront of advancing reactor technologies in partnership with Idaho and fuel innovations that can support both national security and economic growth. Today, however, in many areas, private sector investment in R&D is exceeding government investment, and that requires the labs to strengthen public-private partnerships to ensure that advancements align with national interests. Probably artificial intelligence is the best illustration of this dynamic. From a national security perspective, artificial intelligence is transforming global power dynamics faster than any other technology. While the U.S. leads in areas of AI development, this lead is narrowing as China increases government investment in AI-driven defense and surveillance systems, which have the potential to undermine our legacy deterrent. AI is a force multiplier for national security, and Los Alamos is leveraging artificial intelligence to improve weapons simulations to enhance deterrence, to strengthen cybersecurity against emerging threats, and optimize defense supply chains to ensure resilience. However, our current AI efforts are not operating at the necessary scale. A national AI initiative is needed to apply the most advanced AI tools to national security challenges, to invest in classified AI infrastructure and high-performance computing, and to maintain U.S. leadership in AI-driven deterrence strategies. The nation that first scales AI for national security will shape global stability for decades. Turning now to infrastructure, regrettably, aging research infrastructure does threaten innovation. At Los Alamos, many of our facilities essential for national security are outdated and in urgent need of recapitalization. The Los Alamos Neutron Science Center, or LANCE, is vital for nuclear certification as well as medical isotope production, and it's more than 50 years old and requires modernization to maintain reliability. The Lance Modernization Project, which was recently approved for Critical Decision Zero mission need, is crucial for restoring full capability. Similarly, our explosive research complex, which supports national defense and warfighter safety, faces structural deficiencies that hinder critical research. These facilities must be updated to sustain scientific and defense innovation. The data from our experimental facilities is the raw material for training artificial intelligence. So investing in modern infrastructure is not just a scientific priority, it's a national security imperative. Rapid technological advancements have also made technological surprise a growing concern. Unlike past areas where research could be tightly controlled, AI and emerging technologies are advancing often in open source environments, making them more difficult to monitor. To counter these risks, the U.S. must develop classified AI test beds at the national labs to assess emerging technologies, leverage AI-driven intelligence to track adversarial advancements, and strengthen our collaboration with allies to maintain a strategic edge. The best way to prevent technological surprise is to lead in innovation and deployment. We must get there first. Because private industry leads in AI and quantum computing and other disruptive technologies, the national labs must collaborate closely with industry to accelerate advancements and ensure they align with our public needs. At Los Alamos, we've already partnered with leaders like OpenAI and NVIDIA and can leverage the success of DOE's recently successfully concluded exascale computing project to integrate AI into national security applications. Expanding these collaborations will accelerate scientific breakthroughs in national security applications. It will ensure that U.S. AI models drive innovation rather than foreign competitors, and it will keep us at the forefront of technological leadership across a broad range of scientific and engineering disciplines. Strong partnerships between national labs and private industry will drive American leadership in science, technology, and defense. To ensure the U.S. remains the global leader in science security, we must take decisive action in 3 areas: launching a national AI initiative to maintain U.S. leadership in AI-driven security, investing in modern scientific infrastructure to sustain innovation, and expand public-private partnerships to accelerate technology development. This committee plays a pivotal role in ensuring the U.S. does not fall behind. I urge you to support these investments in science, technology, and national security to secure our future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Kearns, you're now recognized for, I guess, 5 minutes.
Chairman Weber, ranking members Ross and Lofgren, members of the subcommittee, thank you really for the opportunity to appear before you today. It's my honor to discuss the Department of Energy's national laboratories and the drive to innovation and science at scale, which underpins the economy and our national security. I am Paul Kearns. I'm a director of Argonne National Laboratory, which is stewarded by the Department of Energy's Office of Science, the largest funder of physical sciences across the federal government. From advancing discoveries in material science, biology, high-energy physics, and nuclear research, to driving innovations in fusion energy, isotope production, and computational science, the Office of Science fuels research that spans all 17 of the national laboratories, engages over 300 universities and higher learning institutions, and impacts every state in the Union, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. The Office of Science National Laboratories feature leading-edge scientific facilities that are essential to the innovation ecosystem. They provide critical scientific capabilities that propel discovery and American innovation through partnerships with industry and academia. These facilities empower multidisciplinary teams to advance bold and innovative scientific and technological endeavors. They are also instrumental in attracting and retaining a talented workforce vital for Argonne's success, and they offer staff opportunities to pursue meaningful careers working on matters of global scale and consequence. Last year was a transformational year at Argonne, where we completed the upgrade of 2 of the Office of Science facilities: the Advanced Photon Source, which provides brilliant high-energy X-rays that researchers use to study complex materials and systems, and Aurora, one of the nation's first exascale supercomputers, capable of performing a billion calculations per second. These facilities are complex engineering marvels. The $815 million upgrade to the Advanced Photon Source replaced the facility's 30-year-old electron storage ring, 1 kilometer in circumference, with the state-of-the-art machine increasing X-ray brightness by up to 500 times. Aurora joins Frontier at Oak Ridge and El Capitan at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory as the 3 fastest supercomputers in the world. These supercomputers dramatically accelerate research. Cosmological simulations that took years can now be done in months, and months of drug discovery are now reduced to days. Last year's Nobel Prize award in chemistry was a testament to the important contributions of the Office of Science facilities they're making to breakthrough fundamental science. The light sources at Argonne, Brookhaven, Lawrence Berkeley, and SLAC National Laboratories identified a third of the 180,000 protein structures in the protein data bank that 3 Nobel laureates trained AI models on to successfully predict the three-dimensional shape of proteins. Knowing the three-dimensional shape of proteins is essential to designing new drugs because it is the protein shape that defines which and how other molecules will bind to it. This achievement has been heralded as perhaps the very first time AI has significantly advanced the frontiers of humanity's scientific knowledge and will make a significant contribution to the development of a vast new set of drug candidates for cancer and other diseases. To continue Nobel-level scientific contributions, we must reinvest in laboratory infrastructure and facilities that drive discovery, innovation, and development of the industries of tomorrow. The facilities, capabilities, and expertise resident in the national laboratories are vital to expanding America's leadership in critical and emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, quantum information science, and microelectronics, and to establishing the U.S. as the pace setter in the race of nations vying for supremacy in science and technology. Adversaries like China are making significant investments in these industries. Our technological edge of today is not guaranteed. To maintain U.S. leadership and best position ourselves in this evolving geopolitical landscape, we must lean into our core strength in research and development, leverage our unique scientific assets, and bolster our partnerships. One of the most significant roles of the national laboratories is their ability to develop strategic partnerships with industry and academia, and to convene stakeholders to address complex challenges and opportunities. I could cite many examples, but a few that come to mind for me are Argonne-led collaboration with the Greater Houston Partnership, which is working with regional companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil, bringing in the laboratory's expertise in advanced manufacturing and life cycle analysis to really help the opportunities and the challenges such as those associated with low-carbon systems for base chemicals. We're also working with industry leaders that John mentioned earlier, Oklo and TerraPower, using Argonne's deep capabilities in advanced reactor technologies and the nuclear fuel cycle, really to accelerate the commercialization of next-generation technologies. Our country stands at a pivotal moment. Innovations of today will see transformational breakthroughs that will enable our future prosperity. Now is not the time to hold back. With renewed investments in the infrastructure and expertise of the laboratories, the U.S. can contribute to lead in emerging technologies such as AI, quantum computing, and advanced manufacturing. By accelerating and scaling our fundamental R&D, infrastructure, and strategic partnerships, the U.S. can secure its position as global science and technology leaders of the future. Thank you for your continued support and the opportunity to testify today. I do look forward to the questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Doctor, is it Budil or?
Budil.
Budil, Dr. Budil, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Weber, ranking members Ross and Lofgren, members of the subcommittee, good morning and thank you for having me here today. I'm honored to speak to you on behalf of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, a DOE National Nuclear Security Administration lab and proud member of the DOE's network of national labs. More than 3 decades ago, I arrived at Livermore as a physics graduate student, seeking to do cutting-edge laser experiments for my research. What followed was a remarkable opportunity to become part of an amazing multidisciplinary team dedicated to pursuing world-class science and technology to advance U.S. national security and global stability. That commitment to service to the nation is what animates our exceptional workforce of nearly 9,000 employees and inspires me every day. Today, we find ourselves at a critical time in history with an evolving global security environment that presents unprecedented challenges. Sustaining U.S. leadership in this complex world requires a new approach. Speed and innovation must be our focus, a sentiment reinforced by our new Secretary of Energy. We must become more agile and adaptable, not only through S&T innovation, but also through taking bold, well-considered technical risks, seizing opportunities, and streamlining business practices. This is also a strategic moment for NNSA and its national security laboratories. The need to modernize the nuclear deterrent is urgent. We face many challenges, particularly an aging and inadequate infrastructure. but it's also an opportunity to use our powerful S&T tools to go faster, develop new materials, pioneer new manufacturing approaches, reimagine the design to production lifecycle, and deliver new capabilities to meet emerging needs. Modernization efforts are underway, and we're building strong partnerships across NNSA and with partners in the other labs and in industry to introduce innovative manufacturing technologies. We propose to create a complex at Lawrence Livermore called Viper, where advanced materials and manufacturing methods will be developed, prototyped, scaled up, and quickly transferred to industry partners. 2 of NNSA's flagship and world-leading capabilities are located at Lawrence Livermore. The recently dedicated El Capitan supercomputer, which debuted at #1 on the top 500 list, and the National Ignition Facility. Both exemplify the importance of sustained, multi-year congressional support for investing in the core competencies and capabilities of the national laboratories. El Capitan is a remarkable machine. It provides a 20-fold increase over our last computer and is made even more powerful when coupled with AI and machine learning. It's ideal for our modeling and simulation efforts, but it also has 44,000 GPUs, making it an ideal machine for AI investigations. With strong industry partnerships and continued support, we're poised to take full advantage of this rapidly evolving field to accelerate both product delivery and scientific discovery. Achievement of fusion ignition and energy gain at NIF in December of 2022 was a historic event, 60 years in the making. This success was only possible with that sustained support over decades. But fusion ignition is not an endpoint. It's the beginning of our pursuit of high yield for nuclear deterrence, energy security, and scientific discovery. And continued investment will be critical to our success going forward. After 15 years of service and more than 4,500 experiments, the National Ignition Facility urgently needs refurbishment. NIF sustainment, which is now underway, is an essential investment, along with the Enhanced Yield Capability Project, which was recently granted Critical Decision 0 or Mission Need by NNSA, to increase NIF's laser energy, a critical step toward a future high-yield facility. As we learned in the pursuit of ignition, a little bit of energy goes a long way in these experiments. As a national security laboratory, Livermore contributes to a wide range of important missions for other agencies. Biodefense research to accelerate development of medical countermeasures, partnerships with other labs and with industry to computationally design new cancer therapeutics, novel laser research laying the foundations for next-generation microchips or the next generation of EUV lithography developed at the labs, and developing novel optics to create a new class of space-based platforms. These and other projects truly exemplify our motto, science and technology on a mission. Thank you again for offering me the opportunity to share how Livermore's multidisciplinary workforce is contributing to U.S. security, scientific advancement, and global technological leadership. And thank you for your continued support for our important work. I look forward to today's discussion.
I thank the witnesses for their testimony. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. This will be a question for each of you. Last month, President Trump signed an executive order unleashing American energy, which pauses funding allocated through the IRA and IIJA. On January 27th, OMB released a memo to temporarily pause new awards, disbursements of federal funds under all open awards, and open notices of funding opportunities. Although 2 district court judges issued temporary restraining orders, would any of your labs have been impacted by the EO or memo if implemented, as it specifically relates to DO-related work? Before you answer, to be clear, I'm not asking about lab-related work from other agencies or departments. Dr. Wagner, we'll start with you.
Following some time to implement, we have not been impacted.
Short and sweet. Dr. Mason?
Yeah, if you're excluding other agencies, then the impacts are rather limited. We've identified $200,000 of current funding, and there is some additional funding that was in the pipeline award that's not yet been received that could potentially be impacted in the future.
Okay. Dr. Kearns?
Impacts at Argonne are more severe. About $37 million in research activities have been suspended or put on hold. That represents the work of some 140 staff. Not all our staffs are fully funded by the activity, so it equates to about 40 FTEs.
Thank you, Dr. Budil.
So we had one project funded under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act supporting grid resiliency activities. So this is a $7 million project where the funds were unallocated on January 28th.
Thank you. And Dr. Wagner, I'm going to come back to you. Under the Nuclear Fuel Security Act, Congress mandated that DOE provide developers of advanced nuclear reactors no less than 3 metric tons of HALEU by September 30th, 2024. Today, it's February the 12th, 2025, and my understanding is that DOE has not released a single kilogram of HALEU. Is that correct?
I would really defer to the Department of Energy to answer that question, but I think it's probably correct.
Dr. Mason, you think that's correct too?
We have a partnership with Kairos that's looking at that HALO fuel, and I have not yet heard from Kairos whether or not they have had an impact on their planned supply.
Dr. Kearns, you?
I don't have any additional information.
Dr. Budil? No? Okay.
Nothing additional.
X Energy, an ARDP recipient, is building its XE100 reactor at Dow's facility in Seadrift, Texas, which is roughly probably, 100, 150 miles south of my district. So my question for each of you is, how important is HALEU to the success of the ARDP and Gen 4 reactors broadly? I'm going to go in reverse. Dr. Budil, I'll go start with you.
I'm probably not the right expert to answer the question since we have very limited involvement with nuclear fission.
We'll go back this way, Dr. Kearns.
Yes, HALEU is certainly important, really, to the development of advanced reactors. Many of the vendors that we're working with do have plans to power their reactors using HALEU, so critically important.
Dr. Mason.
As I mentioned, we have an activity with Kairos, which is one of the SMR startup companies, and the particulars of that involve the fabrication of the TRISO HALO fuel that would be used for their very first test reactor that's being built in Oak Ridge. They have built a fabrication facility in Albuquerque, adjacent to Kirtland Air Force Base, where they've been prototyping the fabrication of these TRISO pellets. But in order to work with HALEU, which is necessary for their reactor design, which involves TRISO pellets and molten salt coolant, they needed a facility that could handle that sort of material, and actually at Los Alamos we have the capability to work with special nuclear material. It's not our intention to get into the fuel fabrication business long-term, but it helps solve the chicken and egg problem, which is critical to this technology.
But you are, sounds like you are confident they're going to be able to get this done.
Yes, it's a very promising thing, and once the technology has been demonstrated in the test reactor, then I think a commercial supply would be stood up to supply the ongoing needs. So we're just helping the transition to reality.
Dr. Wagner, you concur with that?
Yes, I concur with that. I'd just say that the high-assay LEU, or HALEU, is essential to almost all of the advanced reactor concepts. The supply of that material is incredibly important, and the timely supply of that material is important. We are working with the Department of Energy. They are working to make material available at Idaho National Laboratory. We do have some stocks of high-assay LEU that we are working with the department to make available to private sector companies, Kairos, Oklo, and many others.
Okay, thank you for that. I now recognize Ranking Member Ross for her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all heard in my opening statement, grid resilience and reliability is a key priority, I think, not just of mine and North Carolina, but this entire country. And so I'd like to ask a few more questions, Dr. Budil, about the $7 million that you have yet to receive. My understanding is that that was in partnership with the private sector to support a project focused on reliability and resilience. I'd love to hear more about the project and its status, and whether you've been given any explanation for why the funding has ceased.
Thank you for the question. So the project involves utilization of a special laboratory we have at Lawrence Livermore called Skyfall. Skyfall is a cyber physical test bed, so we can use our high-performance computing to run models of the grid operating, and then put real hardware from grid systems in line with those models. And that's a way for us to run scenarios where there might be a cyber attack or other operational upsets, and understand how the equipment will respond to that. So this is a really important partnership for us, working with utilities and private sector companies so that they can understand in a real-world environment how their different types of technology they're introducing into the grid will operate in that system. So I think this is critically important work. It's a great partnership between us and the private sector, and it really does give them access to a different capability because of this high-performance computing backbone, where we can put a very realistic scenario together. It's also a place where we train a great deal of workforce on questions like cyber resiliency. So we run a cyber program where we bring in teams of students and teach them about cybersecurity of complex systems like the grid. And they actually do an exercise where they work to, as ethical hackers, to take the system down. We have a little town that we've built that they do team challenges against. So this is a way for them to gain real-world experience. Most of these students don't come from computer science backgrounds, so this is really their first experience of cybersecurity. So that nexus of real hardware, large-scale models of grid, and an understanding of the threat space, and then the workforce training pipeline, I think, are all critical to ensuring the next generation of technologies are deployed securely.
Well, I think you're going to love a bill that we got through with bipartisan support on the House side the last time that deals with more funding for cybersecurity in DOE, and we're going to reintroduce it. I also understand that Livermore had a partnership with the State Department to focus on cooperative threat reduction, and this ongoing effort has just been terminated by the new administration. Could you give us any more details on that?
So this is about a $1 million effort as part of a program through Brookhaven National Labs, Non-Proliferation and National Security Department, to do cooperative threat reduction work, where we have a long legacy doing things like capacity building, international support for things like nuclear forensics, and understanding, how to manage interdicted nuclear materials should they be arise. It's about $1 million project, and as far as I know to date, it's paused. We don't know if it will be restarted at a later time.
Well, hopefully we can work on both of those things in a bipartisan way. Several of you have talked about the importance of AI for our energy leadership. And I don't know who would be the best person to answer this question. We only have a minute left. But can you describe how meeting the demand for critical AI infrastructure can help support both the scientific enterprise and the public interest? Maybe Dr. Mason first, since you emphasized AI in your response.
Yeah, AI and electricity go together for sure. And in fact, the AI demands are kind of baseload demand. It's always on, you always need to be running. And so that has implications in terms of the type of electrical supply. But our ability to support that at the scale that's needed is going to be challenged, just because the rate at which we ramp up electrical production is very different than the rate at which AI is ramping up as a discipline. And so I think as a nation, we are going to be challenged to respond quickly enough to maintain the very tenuous lead that we have in this field.
Okay, with the last 9 seconds, anybody have anything to add to that?
I'll just say that AI is really transforming everything we think about science, how we use data, how we do experiments, even how we think about developing new technologies, because AI with advanced manufacturing allows you to make things you couldn't even conceive of before.
Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your having this hearing. To each and every one of the witnesses, thank you. I've visited in many of your labs. I've worked with you all, I guess, over the past 14 years, now 15 years. In short, our national labs are a national treasure. It's probably the most enlightening experience I've had as a member of Congress, and now as a senior appropriator chairing the Energy and Water Subcommittee, which funds the Department of Energy, but could not be more pleased and thankful for your opening statements and the questions. I wanted to ask each and every one of you your thoughts about this. My district is home to the Oak Ridge National Lab, actually the Oak Ridge Reservation. We have the NNSA facility there, Y-12 building, UPF. Nuclear cleanup is near and dear to my heart at many of your reservations. I know Idaho has done a great job over the years, Los Alamos. I chair 7 or 8 nuclear-related caucuses. So this is what I do in Congress, and each and every one of you all have been my partners. This committee has long recognized the value of public-private partnerships. In fact, I think some of you alluded to this in your comments, that boost our nation's competitiveness on a global scale. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you all, can you explain the benefits and share any examples of industry collaboration leading to the commercialization of transformative technological achievements? For example, in my district, X Energy, which the chair has already referenced, developed their TRISO fuel at ORNL and is now building a commercial facility to produce it at scale. Dr. Wagner, 2 companies working at INL are currently conducting a feasibility study to co-locate their fuel fabrication facilities and are exploring collaboration on reprocessing and recycling technologies, which is also near and dear to my heart. Can you all comment on the benefit of industry collaboration and the pathways to commercialization? And I guess I'll just start with Dr. Wagner and go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, and I'd like to start by thanking you for your support of the National Laboratories in general and for nuclear energy in particular. You've been a great advocate for both of those areas and much, much more. So you already are quite familiar with a lot of the public-private partnerships and the important aspects of going, but I'd like to maybe just quickly talk about a couple. You mentioned TRISO fuel. It was the laboratories that came together with the Department of Energy more than a decade ago to figure out how to fabricate and then evaluate the performance of the fabricated TRISO fuel and graphite associated with those reactor types, working together with private industry and ultimately issuing a topical safety analysis report through the Electric Power Research Institute to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that formed a baseline then for all of these reactor developers to work from. So really kickstarting that fuel form in terms of the availability for private developers to use that. Today, one of the things that we're really doing closely with multiple private companies is providing test beds for full system reactor demonstrations that will de-risk, as I said, their technologies and enable their path to commercial deployment. These things are not possible in facilities other than facilities like the Department of Energy National Laboratories.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Mason.
So I guess maybe I'll highlight the importance of public-private partnerships in artificial intelligence. The U.S. is fortunate that we have private sector actors who are making massive investments in developing these capabilities. In fact, that's one of our big strategic advantages. When you look at what's going on in China, there are investments on a similar scale. And of course, in the Chinese system, there is no clear distinction between government investments and private investments and national security investments. That's why it's essential that we are able to leverage the tremendous innovation that's happening in our private sector for our national security needs. We have been working with many of the AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic. We've been using Llama, the Meta open source AI, but I wanted to highlight 2 partnerships in particular. One is with NVIDIA, the chip maker. Last year, we took delivery of a wonderful new machine called Venado that we agreed to purchase 4 years ago. It's a good thing we made the deal with NVIDIA 4 years ago because I don't think we could get it now. And recently, we reached an agreement with OpenAI to field their raw model weights on that machine in a classified environment. in service of all three of the NNSA labs, Livermore, Sandia, and Los Alamos. And this is an example where we can take advantage of the huge investment that OpenAI developed or expended in developing their advanced models, but do it in a classified environment for our national security applications. You know, there may not be as big a financial model to incentivize the private sector to do that sort of work, and that's why we need to work to align our interests and hopefully drive forward the science and technology as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think I've exceeded my time, and in all due respect to our witnesses, who I know very well and respect, but I certainly want to yield back. I know our colleagues all want to speak.
Well, I wasn't going to point that out, but the gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the ranking member, Ms. Lofgren. For
I would just
5
like to
minutes.
note that the chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee gets extra time.
The gentlelady yields her time. No.
First, I want to thank this really wonderful panel of witnesses, and not only for being here, but for the work you do each and every day that advances science and helps protect our nation. Dr. Budil, I want to congratulate you again on the NIF's stunning achievements. It's fabulous. DOE Office of Science selected Livermore to lead a multi-institutional endeavor called the Starfire Hub, focusing on exploring and developing immense potential of inertial fusion energy technologies. Can you give us more details of the Starfire Hub to date, and also what private fusion companies you've been working with and what unique capabilities they're bringing to the effort?
Yes, thank you for the question, Representative Lofgren. The Starfire Hub is a really exciting opportunity for us to lean into our opportunity to build an inertial fusion energy ecosystem. So this allows us to work with the many players emerging in the private fusion industry to begin to build programs to develop workforce that will support that industry, and to begin work on some of the important technical challenges that stand between these companies and commercial deployment of fusion energy. So in the inertial fusion energy realm, we're a smaller fraction of the fusion industry in the U.S., but still growing day by day. We have CRADAs, Cooperative Research and Development Agreements, with most of the companies in this arena. So that includes companies like Exemer, Focused Energy, Pacific Fusion, and several new ones coming on the scene as time goes by. And in each of those cases, these companies are critically dependent on our capabilities and our workforce. In particular, for inertial confinement fusion, the only facility where the physics of the igniting target can be studied is the National Ignition Facility at Livermore. So in each case, these companies are critically dependent on our research teams. We're also home to the most advanced modeling and simulation tools to enable them to design their new schemes for approaching a commercial scheme for fusion energy. So it's a small effort, $15 to $17 million, but very important as a community building effort in the beginning. I'll just note, for the broader fusion ecosystem, this need for investment in public research infrastructure is also critically important. And all of the fusion companies, magnetic and inertial alike, are counting on the infrastructure at the national laboratories to really fill critical technical gaps for their schemes going forward.
I just note, there's probably more private sector money going into fusion now than public, but there's some things only we can fund. The basic research that's going to be beneficial to every single company that's exploring opportunities. I would note that China is currently building a NIF replica that's bigger than what we have, and meanwhile, we have needs just to keep up with what we've got. I note that in the December releases for fusion from Office of Science, there was an award using AI to address questions as to material science for first wall fusion issues. What else needs to be done in terms of test beds, which China, the fusion scientists did an outline of what we should do. We haven't funded it, but China has fully funded it. What do we need to do to beat them to the punch on this and to be successful in our quest for fusion?
So I think ramping up the effort at the facilities that we currently have in the national laboratories to do things like understand the performance of first wall materials and other critical componentry in high radiation environments. These companies need us to help them with tritium fuel cycle. So each of these reactor concepts that uses tritium requires a closed fuel cycle concept. Only the national labs really have the infrastructure to advance that. There are other types of materials and systems integration questions which are difficult to answer without the infrastructure at scale that we have. So the fusion labs, Princeton, Lawrence Livermore, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Idaho, have a critical role to play really in providing that infrastructure. There are a set of new facilities that have been proposed by Fusion Energy Sciences and the Office of Science that would play a critical role in advancing the cause. But I fear that the timescale to develop new facilities means that we need to invest more in existing facilities to really try to fill these gaps.
I'm not chairing an appropriations subcommittee, so I will yield back my time since I'm over.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Lieutenant Colonel Representative Biggs from South Carolina for her 5 minutes of questioning. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Weber, for holding this important hearing today with the National Laboratories. And I would like to thank the directors of Idaho, of Los Alamos, of Livermore, and of Argonne National Labs for joining us. And I want to bring attention to our friends, my friends at the Savannah River National Laboratory. So the security of our power grid is paramount. The modern world is more interconnected now than ever before. And with this comes the risk of cyber attacks from non-state actors and foreign adversaries alike. Savannah River National Laboratory, through its Global Security Directorate, supports the United States national security community by focusing its efforts on power grid security, electronic warfare, and wireless test and evaluation processes. So my question is for each of you. Because of President Trump's America First agenda, the United States is ready once again to strive for energy independence and dominance. We must ensure that our energy infrastructure is secure and that it is resilient in face of today's threat environment, especially from the growing perils of cyber attacks. What are your labs doing to address the challenges to energy resilience, and what partnerships do you see as critical to the success to reach this goal?
May I start?
Please.
Thank you for the question. At Idaho National Laboratory, in addition to our energy mission, we do a lot of work in critical infrastructure security, primarily cybersecurity for physical control systems, as well as physical security of those systems, partnering with Savannah River and other laboratories. We do a lot of work for the Department of Energy's CSER office, that's Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, as well as the Department of Homeland Security's CISA, that's Critical or Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Resilience Agency. So what we do then is we've done a lot of things. As you probably are aware, there's a lot of control systems in our infrastructure that were put in place before we understood the cybersecurity risks. So we do vulnerability assessments to understand where those are, how to address them, working with the control system and the critical infrastructure owners to address those risks. We also have developed methodologies to address consequence-based cybersecurity measures such that as we deploy new critical infrastructure, that we deploy it in a more cyber-secure way from the very beginning. Multiple tools as well as training for the different owners of these critical infrastructures relative to their vulnerabilities. And lastly, I want to give time for my colleagues. We are working hard on more firm energy sources to shore up the reliability of our grid as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I can maybe illustrate with an example something that relates to your question. At Los Alamos, we've been collaborating with our colleagues at Oak Ridge National Lab looking at the application of quantum encryption to the controls that support electric grid operation. We've been doing this in partnership with EPB, the Chattanooga utility that several years ago implemented a fiber network across all of their grid. And so they're an excellent partner for looking at what the future of the grid looks like, where you have internet-enabled fiber optical connections between the various circuits that switch things on and off, which could be a source of disruption if a malign actor gained access. And so by applying quantum encryption, we have communications protocols that are much more resistant to external attack. And so this EPB partnership allows us to basically operate a test bed for future, more secure grid security.
Thank you.
There are four examples I would cite from Argonne. Argonne also does quite a bit of work in cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection for not only the Department of Energy, but for other federal agencies. A great example is really critical infrastructure interdependency, looking at, if you will, the impact of disruptions to our national gas supply, to the electricity availability and transmission broadly across the country. Another one is securing massive edge assets, and this, again, is looking at assets at the edge of the grid, if you will. It might be gas turbines, it might be combined heat and power, it might be distributed storage, it might be buildings themselves, and the list goes on. It's really the backbone, if you will, of the power grid. The third one is securing the supply chain. Certainly, security at multiple levels is critically important. We talk about materials and components in terms of really enabling the power system. And the last one is extreme event assessment and mitigation, really understanding the impacts, if you will, of extreme weather and how to respond quickly, prepare for and respond quickly to those events.
Great. I'm sorry, but my time has expired, and out of respect for my colleagues, I yield back.
Well, the gentlelady would like to yield back, but Dr. Budil, would you like to weigh in before we do that? I thought you looked anxious.
Well, that's not how you decide where we sit, depends on how much you get to talk. But
It's the same way around our dinner table, just so you know.
exactly. We have many of the same efforts. I mentioned already our Skyfall lab, where we're really trying to understand these cyber-physical systems. Because of our work in national security, we have very strong capabilities in risk assessment and risk analysis. We understand the threat space very well and can bring that, again, in our partnerships with the private sector, to critical civilian infrastructure like the grid. But we also have many partnerships looking at the intersection between civilian infrastructure and things like military installations, really trying to understand how to make those facilities resilient and ensure that critical capabilities like that always have secure access to energy in their environment. So thank you, sir.
Now the gentlelady from South Carolina yields back. Just remember, you owe me. So, Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Oregon for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Weber and Ranking Member Ross, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. This is quite timely to have this conversation in the midst of unprecedented attacks on our research enterprise. Reports suggest President Trump is looking to cut the NSF budget by 2/3. Blanket attacks on diversity have thrown existing research grants into question and caused panic and confusion amongst researchers. Elon Musk's henchmen are running amok at NOAA, threatening critical systems like the National Weather Service that researchers and the public rely on. Inflation Reduction Act funding has been frozen, and Musk's employees now apparently have access to DOE IT systems. And finally, in my backyard, the Oregon NIH has announced indirect funding cuts that will cost Oregon institutions tens of millions of dollars and hamstring critical biomedical research at the Oregon Health and Science University. So I just want to be crystal clear. If the administration continues down this path, life-saving discoveries will fail to materialize. Young Americans will have fewer economic opportunities, and our nation will be weaker and less competitive on a world stage. All of this is a frightening state of affairs as we watch China propel its AI development. So has any one of you been contacted by the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE? And if so, in what capacity or for what purpose?
I'll jump in first. No, there's been no contact at Argonne.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've not had any contact at our laboratory either.
Thank you.
The same, no contact.
No contact at Los Alamos.
Thank you. Should anyone from DOGE seek access to your internal systems or proprietary data, how would you respond?
I mean, we take direction from the Department of Energy, so, you know, if contract direction was given and all the necessary requirements were met in terms of security and so forth, then we would certainly comply with that direction.
If I could follow up on that question, what if you were asked to forego the security requirements?
The way the labs work is, as contractors, we have a set of requirements that flow from the Department of Energy in the form of DOE orders. Those orders are in our contract. We are required to comply with them. If the orders were removed from our contract or waived, then that might provide a mechanism. But as of the moment, all the security orders are still in place, and we are required by contract to comply with them.
Thank you. So I imagine we might need litigation if the contracts were not changed to take effect to override those security mechanisms. Is that correct?
I don't know about litigation, but certainly it requires contracting officer direction to change any of those things.
Okay, thank you. The national labs engage in far-reaching partnerships with researchers at academic institutions across the country, and in Oregon, these include Oregon Tech, students working on clean energy solutions with the National Renewable Energy Lab, Oregon State driving quantum advances with Argonne, and the University of Oregon working with the Pacific Northwest National Lab to pursue discoveries in material sciences, just to touch on a few. Have any of you proactively directed any university partners to amend or altogether stop research activities in response to the administration's orders on DEI or any other executive order?
No, not at Argonne.
Thank you.
I don't believe we have it either.
Thank you.
No.
No.
Thank you. Have any of you heard from university partners with concerns about their ability to continue research partnerships?
No.
Thank you.
No.
No.
And no.
Great, thank you. I will yield back my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Representative Harrigan from North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Chairman Weber and Ranking Member Ross, thank you very much for holding this hearing today, and to our witnesses, thanks so much for your testimony. Really appreciate it. I would agree with the gentleman from Tennessee who said earlier that our national labs are indeed national treasures. And as the American taxpayer invests their national treasures into our national treasures, your labs, we expect to have great and incredible outcomes from those investments. And I think in many cases we do, but this committee has heard in full committee setting testimony that we are behind in research and development. And a portion of that difference that we've seen can be attributed to intellectual property theft. And I'm just curious, as I read through your testimonies and have listened to you today, you all control collectively tens of thousands of employees. You have thousands of visiting researchers. How many of those employees and or visiting researchers are citizens of the PRC?
So at Idaho National Laboratory, we have approximately 50 foreign nationals from China.
As of right now, at Los Alamos, there are about 100 citizens out of about 18,000 total people working at the lab. About 100 citizens of the so-called countries of risk, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Obviously, with the new language in the National Defense Authorization Act, we are working through a process to come into compliance with that by the April end date, and so that number is going down.
So Lawrence Livermore, citizens of China who are not yet legal permanent residents of the United States, we have just short of 60 people. And we're working to come into compliance with the requirements of the National Defense Authorization Act. And I just noted in my testimony, this is on top of the significant systems we have in place to manage our research environment and ensure that we protect sensitive technology, information, important research facilities, and access to our people on a daily basis.
Yeah, at Argonne, Argonne's Office of Science Laboratory, the number of foreign nationals is much higher at the laboratory. Total foreign nationals across Argonne's activities is just short of 1,000. Several of those do come from the Public Republic of China.
When you say several, are you talking about 3 of the 1,000 or more than that?
I'm talking a few hundred.
A few hundred, okay. Have either of you, any of you, have you had any confirmed cases of espionage at your labs dealing with these individuals?
In terms of the people currently at the lab, no. Obviously, over the course of history at Los Alamos, going back to Klaus Fuchs in the 1940s, yes, there have been instances of espionage, which I would note generally relates to access to classified information, which is something that is denied to any foreign national at Los Alamos.
None at Argonne. We do operate under what we call the managed research environment, which really provides really a close look at all we do in terms of engagement with foreign nationals, including vetting those that want to come to the laboratory to access our facilities or collaborate. We also make sure that we are extra careful in terms of scrubbing and reviewing any potential partnership opportunities, any partnership activities that we might do with a foreign company. So.
And I'll confirm nothing in even remotely recent history at our laboratory. Again, we've been in existence since 1952, working in sensitive areas. In addition to the things we've said to date about the managed research environment, we also have operated across that time with very strict controls around classified research, which is segregated both physically and by other controls. And no foreign nationals have access to that research or those networks.
I'd say at Idaho National Laboratory, just like at the other national laboratories, there's a great level of interest from foreign countries in the work that we do. We have a number of safeguards that Director Kearns mentioned in terms of managing those risks. And we do not have any confirmed cases of espionage, but I would say that's largely probably because we work very hard to keep an eye and put safeguards in place before such things would occur.
Thank you all very much for your testimony, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Turner, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Weber and Ranking Member Ross. Let me thank you all for what you do. I want to also just highlight the importance of the research work you all are doing with the grid. I know in Houston, in February of 2021, it was weather-related, but it literally shut down the city. It, in fact, affected even our water systems. So when you talk about weather or cybersecurity, we know how detrimental it can be if we don't build in resilience and reliability. And then, Dr. Kearns, I want to thank you all for your collaboration with the Greater Houston Partnership, with ExxonMobil and Chevron. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what y'all are doing to establish a lower carbon system?
Yes, thank you for the question. The partnership really is relatively new, established about a year ago, really with great engagement from over 20 industry members in the Houston area. We're in the process of working with a few of the other laboratories, including the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and NETL, the National Energy Technology Laboratory, to really settle on a plan of attack along with the industry members there in the greater Houston area. So right now, we're working to scope the study and really kind of understanding how we can be best available and able to really help the greater community there in the Houston area and as they look at low carbon options for base chemical production.
Well, let me applaud that collaboration. And you all have also mentioned the public-private relationships. And Dr. Kearns, you mentioned the engagement with more than 300 universities. Let me just ask, are any of those historically black colleges and universities HBCUs?
Yes. Howard University, since we're here in the district, comes quickly to mind, but many others, including our North Carolina A&T, for example, working together in terms of some of our work associated with environmental monitoring activities. And it's been an area that we've really been deliberate about in terms of engaging, providing opportunities for really all. So thank you.
Okay. And then let me just ask in general, I know that there are some offices that have had to be closed because of the conversation, the executive orders on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think recently you had to close an office. Is that correct?
Yes, at Argonne, we closed the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office. We no longer have a Chief Diversity Officer. We've discontinued our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion councils at the laboratory. So many changes have occurred, to be in compliance with the new directives. Much of that activity was driven by a requirement in our contract to develop a DEI plan. That requirement's been eliminated as well by the department.
And what's can you tell us, elaborate the impact of having to close that Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion office?
I think in terms of impact, certainly there were individuals employed there that are no longer employed there. And we've had to really kind of understand their strengths and look for other opportunities for them at the laboratory. Fortunately, we have what we call the Argonne Leadership Institute, which is really focused on the development of all our employees at the laboratory in terms of their training, thinking about career ladders, what opportunities they see, opportunities for them to engage broadly to really strengthen their base. And so that's really been what we've talked about in terms of not only past activities, but future activities. At Argonne, we have a set of what we call the core values. It's impact, safety, respect, integrity, and teamwork. That's really what we're using to engage with the Argonne workforce broadly as we move forward.
And Dr. Wagner, have you all been impacted by the executive orders dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So we have not had any employees, removed or eliminated, and so while we have changed some things in terms of what we say and how we talk about things, we have not had any further impacts in that.
Okay, and Dr. Mason?
Similarly, we've made some changes in our organizational structure consistent with the contract guidance that we received. However, we have, lab has been growing and we have other needs in human resources, so we've been able to accommodate the affected employees and have also, made the necessary adjustments to both comply with the order, but maintain our commitment to having a workplace that is free from discrimination and is respectful of everyone and the contributions that they bring.
And Dr. Budil, unfortunately, my time is out, and your seating is, we'll have to work on that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Well, before you do, let's yield the gentlelady some time.
Our situation is similar to what's described by the other labs. We did have an office that we closed. Those people spent a small team of people spent most of their time really working on workforce engagement and building that sense of community and team that's so critical to doing big team science the way we do. And so we have restructured our program and directed them to other activities. So that's the main impact for us. And I'll just say that the critical importance of bringing together a broad range of ideas, of backgrounds, of experiences is really how we drive excellence in our laboratories. So we're very strongly focused on continuing that focus on excellence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady and the gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman, Mr. Baird, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and appreciate all of our witnesses being here today. I'm always fascinated with the various kinds of basic research that you do. A lot of times that's a precursor to industry doing theirs. But Dr. Kearns, you're probably the closest to our district in West Central Indiana. In fact, last time I saw you, we were at a joint meeting at Purdue University. And I want to make sure you understood that. Purdue University, right, with the, anyway. So anyway, you know, since that lab is so close, and I believe the projects really reflect the leading edge on quantum science in the Midwest has developed. And in fact, our nation's sole quantum corridor runs from Chicago to Ohio, as you're well aware, with most of that corridor in northern Indiana. So during this committee's prior markup of the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act, I offered an amendment to direct the National Quantum Initiative Advisory Committee to study the creation of a national quantum corridor connecting our national labs, our universities, and our military bases across the country with speed and power of a quantum computer. So do you think we're headed in the right direction with that quantum corridor? And if so, how can we best secure that corridor against any breaches in research, in your opinion?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I do appreciate the subcommittee and the committee's support of the National Quantum Initiative, really, in its renewal, if you will, in that regard. I think many good things have happened under the National Quantum Initiative. One that's particularly important to Argonne has been the stand-up of the National Quantum Research Centers. We operate what's called QNEX, really focused on quantum interconnects. You know, the fascinating thing to me about this is really the strong interest from industry, you know, in many aspects, really, of quantum information science that we have from industry. We have 11 industrial partners as part of that center. The laboratory has had to devote 1 day a week for conversation with other potential other industrial partners that want to come to Argonne and talk about quantum science and their own ideas and how they might partner with us and other national laboratories. I think that's great. In terms of pulling things together, you know, I think the Department of Energy, again, through the Office of Science and the National Quantum Research Centers, there are 5 of them. It's really created a very dynamic ecosystem. I think initially, the first of 5 years has really been focused on developing capabilities and building partnerships. As we look really to moving forward, as suggested by the National Quantum Initiative, it's really about further activation of the ecosystem that's been established. Many of the, I would say, geographic regions of the country have developed quantum networks, quantum test beds, if you will, for quantum communications. And there's always interest in thinking about linking systems. Can we join our efforts together in terms of that national quantum network that you spoke of? Big challenge. Technology's not just there yet, and so it's really important that we continue to invest both in the fundamentals and the engineering aspects associated with quantum information science.
You know, right along with that, it's amazing to me how much energy these data centers take. I've had energy suppliers indicate to me it's going to quadruple their demand for electronics. But anyway, I'm going to go to everyone for this question. You know, I mentioned Purdue University, and we've been working on the small modular reactors in a nuclear study, and we're working with Duke Energy to study the feasibility of using the SMR to power an entire college campus. And recently, the reactor at Purdue was fully digitized and started back up. So can you elaborate on the challenge that that kind of transition and taking it from analog to digital and the consequences of that in related to the SMRs? And we got 46 seconds, so I'm going to start.
So I'll be very quick, but there are increased risks in cybersecurity in transitioning from analog to digital. and researchers around the laboratory complex at multiple laboratories have been working with utilities and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to address those considerations. And actually, there's progress been made on a utility in the United States to do that as a front runner pilot to addressing those concerns. And I do see that going in that direction in the future.
We got 12 seconds for three of you. You got 4 seconds apiece.
I would just note that actually this is an area where DOE did pave the way because the high-flux isotope reactor at Oak Ridge reached a digital controls well in advance of industry, and that, I think, perspective informs some of the work that my colleague discussed.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask for a couple more seconds to get?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get it. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, as has already been commented on, it's underway. I think it's important that we really stay really engaged and really look at the opportunities with open eyes and be as smart as we possibly can to make sure that we're at the cutting edge in terms of the transition.
Agreed, and I think Tom's point about highlighting the role that we can play in partnership in the public sector. We have facilities and experience in many of these areas that could really help accelerate this transition for industry.
Thank all of you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the representative from California, Representative Friedman.
Thank you, Chair Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren. For the record, I firmly believe in continued federal funding into basic research, and I am deeply alarmed by Musk and President Trump's basic freezing of all federal funding that has very much damaged American scientific leadership. And we've heard today about what cuts are doing to your institutions. There is massive return on investment from these research dollars, as we know. And I think it's idiotic to indiscriminately cut funding when we get such a massive return for those dollars. Even beyond nuclear energy, which we've heard a bit about today, this is key for our national security. And the value of those investments can be seen very clearly in California, where we're proud of our scientific leadership. We have a long history of being both a national and global leader in science and have set the standard for groundbreaking research, from aerospace to advanced computing to climate change research and clean energy. And that work continues today with new technologies like artificial intelligence. We're home to leading universities and research institutions that attract the best and brightest from around the world, and we are proud that our children have access to those great institutions as they look for opportunities as they grow. We have collaborations between our national labs and leading universities that have fostered a real culture of innovation in California. In fact, right outside my district, Caltech's Joint Center for Artificial Photosynthesis has brought together 100 world-class scientists and engineers from Caltech to partner with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Those lab-driven advancements translate to high-quality jobs, the kind of jobs that people want for upward mobility, and they grow our local economies in California and beyond. But we have huge challenges in California. We recognize that man-made climate change has led to huge challenges just in our state. We are grappling with droughts and huge swings in weather, and we know that the mega fires that we have seen in the last 10 years are a direct result of that climate change. And at the same time, our president is saying that we should drill, baby, drill. Now, we know what burning fossil fuels means in California, where we have the worst air quality in the nation, especially in the Central Valley. And we are suffering in Los Angeles from devastating fires that were certainly fueled by drought, made much worse by climate change. Director Budil, I am wondering how your research is figuring into the clean energy solutions that are not only creating great jobs in California, but will help us lead the world out of the climate change impacts that are being felt, not just in California, not just in the United States, but all over the globe. And we know that other governments are looking desperately for solutions. And I think it's pretty clear that whatever country comes up with the solutions that will help us escape climate change is going to have the world's leading economy. Because that technology is so highly sought after. So what are you doing and what do you see on the horizon for those clean energy solutions?
So I thank you for the question, divide my answer into two parts. In the near term, our researchers have been working hard to manage carbon in our environment. So how to make fossil fuel burning technologies cleaner, how to capture and store carbon, how to utilize oil and gas infrastructure after it's been expended for some of these efforts. And we have been a big part, the national labs have been a big part of building the natural gas economy in the United States. So I think that adaptation of those technologies in a way that makes them sustainable in the near term is critically important. For the future, we are right at the heart of building this future fusion economy, and the U.S. has an extraordinary opportunity to lead on this front. We have many of the leading facilities in the world, and the only facility in the world that's ever achieved energy gain in a fusion experiment. So that moves fusion technology from the realm of fantasy technology into perhaps a relatively nearer term solution for large-scale baseload energy development with a new technology. So we're working very hard to build up the ecosystem that goes along with that. That's addressing the R&D challenges that still remain to making fusion energy commercially viable, working with companies to understand the gaps they have, and then directing our research to rapidly fill those gaps. Again, materials, tritium fuel cycle being two notable ones, and advancing the state-of-the-art in key technologies for things like inertial fusion energy, where advanced laser technology, high repetition rate experiments, and higher gain target designs, which we can work on at our National Ignition Facility, will be central to success.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Generally yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses here. I really appreciate hearing about all the incredible work you're doing on everything from fusion to machine learning, all these things that we really need to do to stay competitive in our global economy. It's really, really important stuff. I wanted to use my time today to talk about something different that's really immediate and hitting close to home in upstate New York, and something that I want to ask for your help with, and that is the opioid epidemic. It's just ripping through towns across upstate New York. In West Endicott, where I'm from, we've lost some of my high school classmates or their parents because of overdoses and addiction. In Sullivan County, we're losing 2 people per month because of overdoses, and we're having 10 overdoses per month. So 2 deaths and 10 overdoses per month in just Sullivan County. Greene County in my district, we've got the second highest overdose rate in the state. I was at a diner in Catskill in the fall, and it was one of the issues that came up over and over again. We're losing kids and parents and friends and neighbors. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. A big part of it is, frankly, we've just got a wide open border when it comes to fentanyl trafficking. So you've got China sending these ingredients to Mexico, and then the cartels are making fentanyl, and then they're smuggling it into America where it's killing our people, and it's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. And I think we really need the help of the best and the brightest scientists in this country to do it. We need better technology at the border to stop the fentanyl trafficking and to detect the fentanyl. It seems like the sort of thing that if we were able to harness the best and the brightest scientists in this country, we could find a way to detect fentanyl as it's coming to the border. I know that there's already some work being done with our national labs in partnership with the Department of Homeland Security on this. I put to you all, as some of the leading scientific voices in this country, how can we start detecting this fentanyl? What do you need from Congress in terms of, if we have to give you the mission, if we have to have, what do we need to do to galvanize some folks to put some of our best and brightest minds on this issue?
I actually have something that might be of interest to you, but I'm not able to discuss it in an open forum.
I understand. I would, that sounds even more interesting now that you put it that way. And because it's a response to my question, but also it sounds even cooler. So let's find a time. I'm going to drop off my card with you, and let's talk about that.
So we have something that we can tell you about, which is a development of a new countermeasure to counter the effect of fentanyl on those who might come in contact with it. Perhaps not an overdose, but for example, first responders who go out into the field. So using the combination of our experimental and computational capabilities, we were able to develop a therapeutic that counters the toxic effects of fentanyl that could be used for that purpose.
Incredible. Yeah, that's exactly the type of work I think we need. Anybody else have suggestions on this? One of the things I'd like to work with you all on and work with the administration on is whether there's a way, I mean, you guys are just doing incredible stuff, like amazing breakthroughs. And I just think that we have the best scientists and researchers in this country, and we have this immediate problem that is literally killing my constituents. And what I want to do is take all of your talents and your skills and put folks to work on this mission of detecting this stuff before it gets into the country. We've got to get the border secure. We've got to do it. And to do that, we need better technology. And to get better technology, we've got to have our scientists working on it. So I want to support you in supporting that kind of work. And Dr. Mason, we'll talk after about the super secret cool stuff that you guys are doing. Thank you, and I'll yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Dr. Foster for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I guess since we're just talking about fentanyl, I can't resist pointing out that Argonne National Lab, research performed at Argonne, won the Nobel Prize for the study of the G-coupled protein receptor. And this is the actual mechanism when the opioid molecule hits the receptor in your brain that causes the addict to become addictive. This can be directly imaged, and has been at the Argonne APS. They can see exactly what happens when the fentanyl and it's everything that happens after that to the fentanyl molecule hits the brain and how that works. And when you get that kind of understanding, we are now rolling out medically assisted treatments that directly crowbar that receptor so that when the opioid molecule arrives, you actually don't feel it. And so it is this kind of research over decades that really, there are many lines of defense we need against fentanyl and the damage it's doing. The last best line of defense is the human brain. And if we can find simple ways to crowbar the response of the human brain to fentanyl, you won't need border security or anything else because no one won't have addicts desperate to buy the fentanyl. And so I'm just really proud that that's happened in my district. It was Argonne National Lab and the APS. As I mentioned, I have Argonne in my district, and I was really impressive line of research, and I hope that all of the labs will really survive this review that's coming up with flying colors, because for years prior to COVID, I was the chair of the National Labs Caucus, where I got to drag members of Congress to the national labs. And when they'd arrive there, they said, I have no idea this neat stuff is happening. And then they were big advocates for preserving and expanding the budget of the national labs. And so at some point, now that COVID is over, I think we'll resurrect that, because it's really, it's really breathtaking what's happening. And a lot of it, the labs serve as a very powerful flywheel, because things tend to go in and out of fashion. In fusion, fusion's gone in and out of fashion in different forms of several times during my career in science. And so it's really nice that the national labs have a capacity that is there in good times and bad. And to make that happen, you have to have Congress and the Department of Energy that understands the permanent value of keeping the team together, even when it's not popular. And that's why I think it's really going to be an all hands on deck moment to preserve the budgets of these, so you don't see layoffs just because you can during bad times on the budgets here. So I think that's, let's see, I have now used up like way too much of my time and things. Let's see, is there a little bit, there's a really valuable thing the national labs do, which is to curate data sets. I think that was mentioned, the protein folding problem data sets was generated, in large part, at Argonne and other labs. And that gets curated at national facilities. Sometimes that's necessary because of national security reasons. Other times when there are medical privacy reasons, that there's been a role for laboratories to keep those secret and yet appropriately accessible to researchers. And, you know, it's a tough thing, and the labs have the background to do that. Yeah, Director Kearns, can you say a little bit about what Argonne's been doing in terms of just curating data sets and providing compute for researchers?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a critical matter for sure. It is something that not only Argonne, but several of the other laboratories have strength in as well. Thank you for mentioning the Advanced Photon Source. Tremendous opportunity here to work with the broader scientific community, over 7,000 users on an annual basis. I mentioned earlier that we've just completed the upgrade, which will make it, I think, create even more demand for the science that one will be able to do there. It does generate a tremendous amount of data, and we're working hard to really understand how best to really help the researchers take that data and really use it to provide needed information to further their experiments. And so, critical in that way. We also have the honor, really, of having a leadership computing facility at Argonne. Aurora, I mentioned earlier, our exascale system. Certainly one of the key aspects in terms of really having that kind of compute capability is really being able to store and work with large amounts of data. All of the exascale systems across the department, all three of them have really been built with certainly modeling and simulation, data science, and AI in mind. I think Kim mentioned earlier that El Capitan has over 40,000, I think, GPUs. Argonne's Intel built system at Aurora has about 60,000 GPUs, so really fantastic in terms of
And I'm
capability.
afraid my time is now up, and so I just want to thank the chair and the staff for letting me
Well,
come back here. I miss this
Mr.
role.
Foster, if you need to move on with 2 more questions for the other witnesses, we don't want them to feel left out.
Well, I don't know, I could ask about scientific break-even versus economic break-even, but I guess I won't go there right now.
I'm getting up. So the gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Dr. Babin.
Thank you, Chairman Weber. Appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to our witnesses here for being here today with your valuable introspection and expertise and knowledge. I'm going to ask this of all of you witnesses, if you don't mind, and I would ask you please to be brief, because I have other questions I want to ask. When we talk about the importance of maintaining critical infrastructure facilities and workforce to support our basic research, it's important to understand the context of where funding went recently. Over the last 5 years, the Department of Energy recently received close to $100 billion in supplemental appropriations from the IIJA, the IRA, which established over 70-plus new programs. Of the $97 billion appropriated to DOE, what percentage and amount went to the national laboratories out of that $97 billion? And how much did each of your labs receive from these supplemental appropriations? Please answer very, very briefly. How much did you get out of the $97 billion?
So I cannot speak to the percentage that went to the Department of Energy Laboratories. I can get back to you with that information.
Please do.
For Idaho National Laboratory, we've received $150 million, and we use those dollars towards modernization of facilities at our materials and fuels complex and advanced test reactor.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Los Alamos
Dr.
received
Mason.
$200,000.
So $150 million, $200,000. Next, please.
$60 million really devoted primarily to helping us with the exascale computer at the laboratory, Aurora, and also some work in terms of heat recovery systems at the Advanced Photon Source.
Gotcha. Thank you. And Dr. Budil?
So we had a $7 million project that was recently deobligated from the lab.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then Dr. Wagner, Abilene Christian University in Texas received its NRC permit for the construction of the first liquid salt fueled reactor at Abilene Christian University in my state of Texas. However, the project is currently facing issues with procuring HALEU fuel for its reactor. How can Congress help accelerate this procurement process? And what is the current status of the Experiment Breeder Reactor 2, EBR2, spent fuel being converted into HALEU? If you could answer that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. Congress has already done quite a bit to try to establish the capabilities domestically to produce high-assay LEU or HALEU fuel, including $700 million in the bipartisan infrastructure law, and more recently, $2.7 billion to establish domestic capability. I don't know what Congress can do relative to the procurement aspect. That's something the Department of Energy is pursuing. On EBR-2, we are reprocessing spent nuclear fuel from the experimental reactor 2. That was a high-enriched uranium fuel. We recover that material, we downblend it to high-assay LEU, and we are making that available. We will work with the department to make that available to private companies and perhaps Abilene Christian. As of now, we are on our path to reprocessing all that material. That will result in about 9.2 metric tons of high-assay LEU by the end of this decade. We're about halfway through that material.
That's great. It's kind of disconcerting to the university to have gotten their permit but not able to obtain fuel. Okay, as I wrap up, I'd like to address one thing that was brought up today that caught my attention. My colleagues have mentioned that the Trump administration's spending pause is unprecedented. I'd politely remind my colleagues that the previous administration delayed allocation of funding from the IIJA, the IRA, and CHIPS and science laws to add non-statutory conditions like union requirements, unnecessary environmental reviews, and DEI conditions. Not to mention the fact that the Biden administration actually canceled and redirected funding for our border wall, which Congress had voted on, signed into law, even to the point of selling off the materials of the border wall that was unused for 10 cents on the dollar. Unlike the previous administration, if funding is required to be dispersed by a specific time, this administration said it would do so. If the law allows discretion, the president has the authority to review this funding. Given the billions of dollars that went out the door at the end of the last administration, specifically the Loan Program Office at Department of Energy, that gave out over $50 billion in loan guarantees in just the last 5 days of the Biden administration's term, some of those very risky, asking questions about funding that was described by previous administration officials as throwing gold bars off the Titanic. That might be a good idea. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I will yield back.
Chairman yields back. The chair would like to enter into the record a letter from the Partnership for AI Infrastructure. Without objection, so ordered. I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The record will remain open for 10 days for additional comments and written questions for the members. This hearing is adjourned.